What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to another episode of Lucas Live. I am excited to be here with a very special guest in the building, in studio with me today. My good friend Gino Haynes is here. Gino is the founder of Legacy in Action and Legacy Consulting, which he does leadership development consulting, which we have in common, which is fascinating and wonderful as we build leaders. And he is also the community organizer for Canton for All People, which is a fascinating organization that is doing probably more in the city than you could imagine, helping people in various ways and helping our community grow. He was also recently one of the 20 under 40 honorees here in Canton. There's another group coming through now, but he was in the most recent group. That's how I met him, because I saw him up there on stage and I said, that's a guy I need to know. So when you see people doing great things in the community, it's smart to reach out, build those relationships, get to know them. We just went and had coffee, got to know each other, and just hit it off. Absolutely. I think he's my brother, my cousin, my something. And if he's not for real, he is for real, because it really feels like it. Gino, how are you doing today?
Man, I'm great.
Great.
I need to carry you around in my pocket. So
Okay.
you can just every single time.
I can do that.
Yeah, all
I
right.
can do that. You know what I'm saying? I'm a host. Yes, yes.
I'll give you commission or something.
Okay, yeah. Okay, please
we'll
do.
work that out.
Please,
Yeah,
let's
people
work
call
it
my
out.
people.
You know what I mean? Marketing and advertising, you know what I mean? I like to do that, man. But yeah, I mean, honestly, you were somebody who when I went to the 20 under 40,
Yep.
and I went with intention. I went to meet people. I went to see who were these people who I didn't know. I knew some people like Christian Turner and a few others, and Rocco Marigus, a couple other people who I knew. And I was like, cool, I get to go support them. That was a lot of fun. That was a great thing. But then I thought, there's these other people, I don't know who they are. They're in my community. They're doing great things. I want to know them. I want to interview them. I want to talk to them. And you were one who I reached out to early on. We went down to Mugswick's, sat down, and I don't know, we were less than 10 minutes in, and I was just sitting there absolutely fascinated with who you are and what you do. And I'm just really impressed, because there's a lot of people who talk about action in community, whatever community they're in, but they're not taking action. They're waiting on a Gino to do something so they can stop complaining, whereas you're actually doing something. Talk to me a little bit about your background, and then how you why community involvement at the level you're at is so important to you.
So I'm from Akron. So I'm not originally from Canton. I grew up in a neighborhood similar to a lot of the neighborhoods in Canton, so I can relate on that level. But for me, it's interesting, for me, like in a weird way, my career path has afforded me more money kind of every single year since like high school, like after high school.
That's great. That's a good thing. That's a good problem.
Listen, I ain't mad.
Listen, you ain't mad.
God is good.
God is good all the time. All right.
Come on now.
Yes.
But I think the typical trajectory for someone who has that type of upward mobility is to move out, right?
True.
And I did. To be honest, I did. I moved out, but then it was weird. Like as my spiritual maturity kind of growed, like the closer I found myself back into those spaces.
Interesting.
And it just so happened that alignment with, because I was a pastor, with this new church plant that was coming up in Canton that I got asked to kind of help lead, happened at the same time. And so I moved back into the neighborhood. I was like on McGregor, right outside of Short. And so my first interaction with really Canton was on the northwest end. And it was different because I was living there. So I was pastoring in this community that I actually lived in. And so I got to learn the people's names, got to learn some different languages, got to learn all these different type of appreciations just from exposure.
Right.
But then also got exposure to their needs and their problems and so it was like, all right, like what resources do I have? Like, let me not focus on what I don't have. Let me focus on what I do have.
Right.
And then how can I help? And so, nutshell, all of the things that I'm passionate about are because I've had firsthand experience with them. It hasn't been like, oh, I had a passion for community development or I had a passion for, like, no, I had passion for people.
Interesting.
And then that informed my leadership development, that informed my community development, that informed like everything else. So
I love that. I love that. One, you don't often hear about people so at this point still so deep in the communities they serve. As you say, we move out of the communities we serve, and for various reasons.
No fault, like
I
no, and
agree.
no shade.
I
Like
feel the same way.
it's
Yeah,
incentivized for us to.
it
Like it's not
is.
like it's out of malice.
Yeah,
It's more like just genuinely like we want the best for our children, we want the best for our families, we want to make sure that our children don't experience the same traumas and things that we
yeah.
typically experience in those things. So like those are all
Solid reasons.
solid reasons
I've been
too.
there. I mean, we moved from Canton to North Canton, not that far away, but there were opportunities in the school district. There were things that we felt my children, my wife and I, Canton City School graduates, my parents, my siblings, my cousins, my family. We are a long legacy of Canton City.
Yeah.
And I have so much love for the city. My uncle, John Lucas, the first Black councilman in the city of Canton. So I have so
I didn't
much
know y'all was
love.
related. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it's my uncle. It's funny, my first name is Lucas, so it confuses people.
Yeah.
Everybody out there who thinks my name is Lucas. Lucas is not, but I am a Lucas.
That'd be a dope name though.
That would be a dope name, Lucas.
Lucas,
Lucas.
Lucas.
My rapper name is Lucas. Lucas. All right, so he's
OG
my
Lucas.
There you go. Here come OG Lucas. Lucas showing up on the scene. I think I might do that. I might have to change it. My mother, he is my mother's brother. So they had the same father, John Lucas Sr. And so I've seen that and seen a legacy of that. So I care. And even though I'm 10 minutes really up the road, my heart is here and I care a lot about this community. But I didn't always know how to be involved. So how do you feel like, what led to your level of involvement? Let's talk about Canton for All People for a second.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what that organization, what is the mission of that organization, and how did you get involved?
Yeah. The simple answer is just to improve the livelihood and the living conditions of core neighborhood families or core neighborhoods in Canton, Ohio, and families in Canton, Ohio.
Yeah.
We primarily do that through housing. But because we are in the community and we do see the problems, and we do see the families and we do hear the issues, that's like kind of blossomed out into all these other different projects and things like that. Because our whole thing is, again, we say asset-based community development. We don't look at the deficits, we only look at the assets. And then we try to develop based off of those assets. We try to develop, how we can help. How can we make the community's dreams come true?
Yeah.
And what can we leverage? Who can we reach out to be able to make sure that these conditions get better?
I love that. Again, and this is no shot at anyone. It's just that it is easier, myself included, it is easier to talk about it than be about it, right? Maybe people will vote, and a lot of people don't do that, but maybe they'll vote and they'll feel like I did my part. Maybe they'll go to a community event, but if somebody wanted to help or be involved or donate, or what could they do to support Canton for All People?
Money's always good.
Money, we always take money.
Money
Anybody
is
have
always
money?
good.
Just
These things cost money. So
my bank account was running over. Is why I was saying that. I wanted to know where I could spill some of this money.
Spill over on this side.
Spill over here. The stacks just keep falling. So.
Finances are always a thing. Get involved, volunteer. Over at the Shore Market, I think they average around like 300 families a day, like from Tuesday.
What does the Shore Market provide?
So the Shore Market provides fresh fruit, produce, meat, basic grocery item, bread, pretty much basic grocery items that you would get at your typical grocery store. Free. They get it completely free. And they can come as many times as they want. So they can come Tuesday through Friday.
Wow.
From 11 to 4. If you need if you need groceries, go there.
Is it for the people who live there?
It's for anybody.
Anybody could come.
Anybody can come. We used to have it downtown, but we started to recognize, a lot of the families that were coming downtown were living in Shore. So we wanted to move the market that was closer to them so it'd be more accessible, not only to the people who already came, but like to other, because we said, all right, if these are the people and this is the side of town that's coming the most.
Yeah.
Like maybe we
Get
should
to 'em.
move this resource.
I
And I
love
think that's
that. I
honestly
love that.
overall, even if
Yeah.
it's not Canton for all people, I think that that's the wave.
Yeah.
Like the wave is like,
That's really good.
you know, it used to be that you could have your services centered downtown, but if, you know, and then people were coming to you to get those services. But I think the new wave is like you got to go to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. For several
Which makes
compounded
sense,
reasons,
right?
But yeah.
Like I it makes sense. It's the new wave because we've come back to where it should have been, right? Communities were based around resources.
Yep.
That's why people moved to wherever they moved to. It was like, this is good farmland. This is near a river. This is near, right? We've seen that from biblical times and beyond, right? People live near water and near resources. So we moved people into various places for industry. Those industries changed and moved, and we didn't move any support in to help continue to keep those communities alive and take care of those people who now don't have the opportunity to make the finances that they once did, say working in a Timken company or Republic Steel or some of the things that were really, really vibrant around here once. And now there's generations of hungry people, and we don't even think about it.
Yeah, bro.
Because I don't know how often. I remember thinking about hunger and childhood poverty and the issues with that. When I was a child, I remember you could give 7 cents a day and help a child in Africa or something, right? And I was like, those are hungry children. And there was days when I was a kid, every kid was starving. I don't know about you, but I was always starving. I mean, I had a refrigerator full of food.
That syrup sandwich
Listen,
came in clutch a couple times.
Listen, we had what we needed. It may not have been name. Me and my brother used to make fun because we never had name brand stuff. We ate. We didn't have Campbell's. We had Caskies. I don't know what Caskies is. We didn't have, Cheerios. We had some O's of some sort, but we had food. But the resources were, we had Fisher's on Cherry, now where the food bank is. That was our main grocery store, was the Fisher on Cherries and Cherry, and then that was gone. So it's a beautiful thing what the Akron Canton Food Bank has done to position themselves in that community as well.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, shout out to them. Doing some great work there
for
too.
sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And to your point, I don't think that, like, in the same way that we are incentivized to leave, I think you have to be incentivized to come back.
That's a great point.
So, I mean, because right now, just to be open, like, I don't live where I used to.
Right.
I live in Plain, right by North Canton. So, and for similar reasons.
Sure.
Like, I had to put my daughter in the whole situation.
That was school. Yeah, me too. Same stuff.
But, like, you don't have to think about it when the path is already grooved that way.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if we're just going down the path of least resistance,
right,
and the thing that makes the most sense, but it makes the most sense because it was supposed to make the most sense in that way.
Wow.
So we got to figure out, like, the way to fix it is to figure out creative ways to, like, incentivize, one, the talent that we have to stay.
Yes.
But then, like, in the same way that a North Canton or a Plain or Jackson has the incentivization to, move people of that, kind of income.
Yeah, socioeconomic status in that direction.
To move back in that same thing. And so the good thing is, I think that we do have the assets to be able to do that. I just think that we need some leadership strategies.
Okay.
To create those
to
things.
Make it make sense.
And some innovation. Like, it's going to take some creativity and some innovation. Yeah.
I love that.
If you want to, bring legacy in.
Legacy
to help consult.
You could help them out. Let's talk about that. That's a perfect segue. Let's talk about Legacy in Action. You are the founder and creator, owner of Legacy in Action, and you have Legacy Consulting. Talk to us a little bit about that. What does Legacy in Action actually do?
Leadership development. So we do everything leadership development. I'll start. I always tell the story. The idea of Legacy came from my grandmother. So my grandmother was the person who primarily raised me. She passed in 2016, and as a typical funeral, Black funeral, sometimes it's long. But
sometimes it lasts till somebody else passes.
Especially when you got the remarks, right?
Okay, everybody got to say something.
So we were in the remarks.
Ain't seen grandma in 20 years. Like, I got things to say.
I ain't seen you.
I ain't seen you. Where you been? Yeah, you been around.
And so we had these, like, remarks, and these people would come up and they would share these memories. And when I had the pleasure of eulogizing my grandmother, and when I got up there, I was like, all due respect, like my grandma didn't live her life, and all the stories were all about like how she made them feel and how she made them
Mm,
feel like seen and
yeah.
how she gave great advice and all these different type of things.
Mhm.
And I said, my grandma, all due respect, my grandma didn't live a life that just demanded like memories, because
Mm.
memories are actually very selfish in nature, because
Wow.
they are past experiences that we try to resurrect for our own self gratification.
Mm.
So my grandmother didn't live a life for
Wow.
memories, but she lived a life that demanded a legacy.
Wow.
And a legacy implies that whatever you were given, you have the responsibility to carry and to be able to give it away in the same sense that you were giving it to.
Mm.
And that's how like that starts to spread out, right? And so like that was the concept.
Wow.
And that's the whole reading. Like even if you look at the logo, it's like the person with the different things. It's just talking about impact. Like for me,
Yeah.
I never chased like clout. I never chased like popularity. I never
Right.
chased like any of
Right.
those things. For me, it was like impact and efficiency. Like my brain always works in the impact efficiency systems,
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. And I started to, and I just have like this God given ability to be able to see the core of problems,
Yeah.
where people kind of look at the surface level. I just
Yeah.
always had
You
this,
see the root.
yeah, the root
Yeah.
cause. And like, I think, so I think there's other people that are equally gifted at seeing the root problems and can call
Mhm.
those things out. But maturity has taught me it's not just about calling them out. It's about figuring out
Mm.
strategies to be
Wow.
able to like bring those things back to restoration and wholeness and those different type of things. And so for me, I practice that in people, places, communities,
Mm.
systems, all that type of stuff.
Right.
And I needed a vehicle to be able to do that.
Mhm.
There was some, like when I was a pastor, there was some aspects of being a pastor that allowed me to do that,
Yeah.
that like scratched the itch. But then there was still like this open part. So like I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out like, okay, like how does this work? Like, and so I just figured out ways to do it through legacy. And so legacy is a leadership development consultancy.
Yeah.
We focus on developing people, developing places, neighborhoods, and communities. And so and doing that through coaching, team coaching,
Mhm.
training, um, workshops, consulting,
Yeah.
like all that stuff. So
I love that.
yeah,
And
man.
I personally love that specifically because through my company, Tendo Training, I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of leaders around the country and doing various things.
Yeah,
But the fact that you've also found a niche and an ability to work with some people here locally,
yeah,
which I have a little bit, but I always say if I could work more closely to home
yeah,
in leadership development, keynote speaking, hosting, some of the things that I've been able to do, and it's growing.
yeah,
I could be home more in my community more. And sometimes I find opportunity outside of my community more than inside of my community. And it's challenging because people don't know how much I really do want to be inside the community.
yeah.
I do want to support it. Now, there can I think there is something to the idea of at times we go outside of our community to bring
Absolutely,
resources into our
absolutely.
community, then we cycle those resources inside our
Bro,
community.
that's what I so like even for, so like for me, I think around here I'm getting this reputation that like, oh, like this is something that's local. And it is. Like
Okay.
I am having this local impact. But I've been able to do this in like 5 other countries outside of the
That's
United States.
amazing.
So like I and travel to the United States to be able to do this. So I've been
Right.
to California and LA and Reading and all these different type of places
Right.
doing this. Like so but for me, it goes back to like, it's exposure,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
being exposed to different contexts, different cultures, different environments, different work environments, different countries,
Mhm.
like all that stuff. Um, it helps, it equips like different aspects of leadership,
Yeah.
and to be able to take those things, take some things that are
I
universal,
love that.
but tweak them depending on like the context. And that's the thing that I always kind of harp on is like sometimes the solution isn't a universal like answer. Like
Mm.
most of the times the solution has to you first have to take inventory of what is actually there and
Mhm.
what's the status and state of what's there
Right.
so that we can move the needle in the right direction. And I think the reason that people don't really get there is because people try to focus on solving the problem more than they do moving the needle.
Mm.
And so like you
You're
know,
talking when you say that, you mean people focus on solving the whole problem rather than
yeah,
making some progress.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
got you.
Um, and so even when we go to solve the solution, or we try to provide a solution that's solving the problem,
Right.
it's never sustainable
Mm,
because there's all this work that got overlooked, or all these things that got overlooked.
yeah,
And like I just believe in like that, like slow and steady is better than fast and,
yeah. Fast and Furious.
man,
That's Fast and Furious is a
bro.
great movie, but it's
Yeah.
not a way to move and get things done. And that makes a lot of sense. I love the idea that you've traveled and you've seen things in other places. Now, one thing you do is you've gone to Africa many times, I
Yeah.
understand. So that's a place my wife and I have talked about going many times. We
We can
certainly want
set
to
that up.
go for so many. You've said that.
Yeah.
Everybody, he promised he was going to take me to Africa in his bag if he has to. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? He said free round trip. No, whatever it takes, we
I don't
could
know about
pay,
free.
but we'll be happy to. Nobody said free. Did we say
Yeah.
money was important? Talk to me a little bit about what took you to Africa and kind of about that experience.
Yeah. Um, grace of God. So it was back when I was a pastor.
Hmm.
This guy, who knew this other guy from seminary at
Hmm.
Ashland,
Uh-huh.
randomly brought him to a service at a time where I was a co-pastor, so I wasn't preaching as often as the other pastor, but
Uh-huh.
just happened to be preaching this day.
Okay.
And he goes, "Yeah, like for the last 8 months, we've been um, last 8 months we've been praying about like who's gonna replace this person that we had
Mm.
lined up for this conference that we have every year. And I heard you preaching, like I believe that you're the guy." And he was like,
You're like, where's the conference?
yeah.
You're
I
like,
was like,
is it
"Where's the conference?"
Cleveland? Is
Yeah.
it where is it? He's
He
like,
was like, "Yeah, no, in Nairobi, Kenya." And I was like,
wow.
"Oh, okay."
Okay.
Like
Okay.
he was like, "Yeah, just pray about it." I was like, "I don't need." Yeah, you're right. I mean, I
Yeah, you're like,
probably should pray
I don't
about
need
it.
to pray. The Lord is calling me. I'm that guy.
But it had always been a dream for me to go to Africa. It was always a dream for my grandparents, even to
Hmm.
go to Africa,
Wow.
and they never got to. And so, from when I was a kid, I always wanted to go. And in a weird way, this is a sidetrack, but still
Hmm.
connected. In like 2018, I was in Las Vegas, the most random place.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that they try to get you to go and fill out the survey so that you can get a free stay.
Yep.
That they're really trying to sell you a timeshare and all that.
Right.
So I go there,
But you got to go.
and this dude who is African he like stops the whole presentation, and he
Mm.
goes, "Are you a pastor?" And I was like,
That was an odd question in Vegas.
that's
You're
a
like, well, I
very
know.
right,
I'm not marrying nobody out here. I don't
right.
know what you're talking about.
He was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Oh." He was okay. He's like, "Yeah, man." He said, he's saying, "You're a believer, obviously." I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Man," he's like, "I see you in Africa." I was like, "Bro, what?" Like,
Wow.
I ain't never even like, I was like, "Bro, I ain't never met you, whatever."
Right.
So like, it was this weird thing that I just kind of
Wow.
kept in my. He was like, "Yeah, man, I see you with kids. I see you with all
Mm.
this other type of stuff." So fast forward, this is
He
2020.
doesn't know you at all, and he asked you if you're a pastor.
Yeah, not at all.
You're not out there. You're not dressed in any way. And
No
you're not
way,
doing
bro. I'm
anything
just
to
just
like
like this,
this.
bro.
Right. There's no reason for it to
I have
walk
no
up and be like,
idea.
right.
And he goes, he was like, "Yeah, I see you in Kenya with like kids and all this other type of stuff." So
Mm.
fast forward, this dude after service is saying like, "I want you to come and speak at our conference." And then he says, he was like, "Yeah, I have an orphanage. Like I run an orphanage
Wow.
there. We run schools there. We do all these outreaches. We do rehab for folks who are in addiction there, and like
Mm.
we just want you to come." And so that's how the opportunity came about. Simultaneously, like uh, I went through a divorce, and right before, like really right before COVID hit,
Uh-huh.
and the quarantine. And so that following year, really that whole year was like development for me.
Hmm.
Like I went to Ashland, shout out to Ashland,
Shout out to Ashland
and
University.
did some classes on just leadership development and just
Mhm.
learning myself. And then I got some certifications and some other things, had some mentors and things like that. And then um, I ended up, because COVID hit, it didn't happen. So 2020 happens, everything shuts down, didn't
Right.
come. So 2021 was my first time actually going.
Wow.
And I went there, and it was a life changing, and I went there on sabbatical. So it
Mm.
was like I literally started my sabbatical from the church, and I just went off to Africa for like 3 weeks.
Wow.
And yeah, it was an amazing
It's hard to come
experience.
back probably
And
after.
I'll say this too.
Mhm.
One of the things that like was really eye-opening about going to Africa was it was just as liberating for them than it was for me
What does that
in a weird
mean?
way. Like so um they are used to Americans coming, but they're used to white Americans coming.
Oh,
They're
wow.
not used to like people who are African American. So like they had all these different questions, and then they would refer to me as son of Africa.
Wow.
So they were like, literally everywhere I would go, the son of Africa, welcome home.
Wow.
That's what they would tell me.
That's a beautiful
It was
experience.
crazy. And I always tell people, like, in a nutshell, I could talk about Africa all day,
Uh-huh.
but in a nutshell, what Africa was for me was it Africa contained a piece of me that I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
Like my sister, she said, when you get over there, take your shoes off, put your feet on the ground.
Mm.
I was like, I don't know, like that's a weird request, but
Sure.
okay, I'll do it.
Right.
So when I did it, I did there. And when I did it, like it felt like, man, like this is the land that my ancestors were taken from.
Wow.
And I'm probably the first person in my line to ever come back.
Wow.
And it was like crazy. And then I started to see like these mannerisms and these things in African culture that we still do, but like it's like we do those things, they do those things, but it's detached. So like
Right.
it was like a piece of like identity that was like woven back together for me. Like,
Wow.
oh, this is where this come from, or this is why we do this. This is what we did over here. And
Wow.
like all these things that like, I feel like other cultures get to
Yeah.
experience, like, Italian. My wife is half
Mhm.
Italian.
Mhm.
They already have these traditions and these things. They
That
know
have
where
been
it comes
passed
from
up.
and all,
Right. Exactly. They can reach back to their homeland and say, this
all
is
of
where
that.
it came from. Right.
For us, I feel like internally sometimes, like, and even unintentionally, like, or
Mhm.
maybe we're not even just sensitive to it,
Right.
but there's a part of us that like wonders
Mm.
where this comes from,
Yeah.
and those different. And so for me, it was just really, really healing. I have never experienced that level of hospitality.
Wow.
I've never experienced that level of just community or
Mm.
even just joy.
Really?
Man, like they are poor in what we have,
Okay.
but they are rich in what we don't.
Wow.
Man, like they are very um yeah, they're just so rich in joy,
Mm. Which is priceless.
which is
Because
priceless.
we got a bunch of stuff
Man,
that we take for granted. Even our
man,
poorest have opportunity to come get free food, free vegetables, things like
yeah,
this, housing, things
yeah,
that you help work on. And not that Africa is just a fully impoverished continent, and we
yeah.
just act like everybody over there is starving. But
And this
to
is, and I always, when people say that, I always say like it's exploited. It's
yeah,
not impoverished. It's exploited because literally it is the richest place in the world in
that is
resources.
insane.
It's the richest place in the world in resources, but the land isn't owned by
Mm.
the people who till it and
Who care for
who
it and
care for it.
who
And
harvest the resources.
yeah, so there's other
Mm.
people that are benefiting.
And when we
Um,
read about wealthy people in history, we
yeah.
hear of places like Egypt and places that are in
Mhm.
Africa,
Mhm.
right? And we don't realize how much the wealth of the world came from there in
Yeah.
many ways. And it's a lost thing and a lost concept. And what does it? Did any parts of it make you angry?
Oh, man.
I mean,
Yes.
it's funny. I asked that genuinely because I don't know that it did, but it sounds like. What was that like? What did it?
Yeah. Um, so much, man.
Mm,
Like you drive, and literally the ground. I even wrote a poem.
mm,
Excuse me.
mm-hmm.
I even wrote a poem about the ground, because it was like the ground was like so rich and red that
Mm.
you would like look out and there would just be like fruit just growing for miles and miles and miles.
Wow.
There'd be tea, like literally like fields of tea just flowing and all these different type of things. And I'm
Wow.
like, man, like and then even like the metals and things that they get from the ground, like our cell phones, like all the things that make that work come from there.
Wow.
So I'm like, how does a place who has so much
Everything.
resources,
Right.
um,
That is producing trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars around the world. Probably numbers bigger than trillions
just
around the world.
literally, be this impoverished? And you know, you go downtown, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But downtown is mostly, you have mostly Chinese, and riding on the skyscrapers and things like that. And the government owns a lot of that property.
Yeah.
And so like you start to see like the power of ownership. And
Yeah.
this is why this is all like
Brings
connected.
back to what you do here.
Ownership.
Yes.
Like if you don't own the land, you don't have a say.
Yeah.
Right. Like whether we like it or whether we don't,
Right.
we can argue about it till we're blue in the face. Like the policies and the Constitution even is written for landowners.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you don't own land, you're already at a disadvantage. But also, not just owning the land, but like where the property value is. If the property value is, above the rate of income, then you're underwater, and usually you're forced to move.
Wow.
So the trick for us has been like, how do we figure out ways?
When you say us, you mean
Canton for all people.
okay.
So how do we figure out ways to, because you want property value to raise. Like
Of
that's
course.
the whole point, right?
That's a good point.
You want it to raise at a rate that incomes
Are also right.
like
Keeping
it
up
doesn't
with,
it doesn't
right.
go too fast,
Right,
because then you
right.
get into gentrifying and things like that.
Yeah.
But then here are other questions like, can you gentrify a transient community?
What does that mean?
So
Talk
like,
to us. First of all, define gentrification, because I think people have a basic concept of the term, but maybe don't understand what gentrification is. And then when you say, can we gentrify a transient community? Talk to us about that.
yeah. So I feel like there's different people, excuse me, that have different opinions about each, one of these. But I feel like Majora Carter, she says, people think that gentrification is when white people come in and buy a community.
Right.
But she says it's really actually when the people who live within a community don't value it themselves.
That's different.
Super deep.
That's
like,
deep.
Shout out to Majora. Like she's a friend. But she talks about like, you don't have to move out of your community to live in a better one type of thing. Like that's her book that she wrote. That's really, really good. But 76%. So I'll just use Shorb as an example because that's our target area for Camp for All People. Shorb has like 76%.
And for people listening anywhere around the world, Shorb is a particular. It's a street, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of a neighborhood area
yeah.
that has had some issues of poverty, crime. It's a poster child, say, for some of the ills of a community in a small town. Right.
And so 76% of the people who live in that neighborhood are renters. So you only have 24% of those who actually own their homes. So that 76%, which is the vast majority, only live in the community for about 2 years. And then they are moving out somewhere else.
Right.
So when you have a transient community that is transient mainly because of lack of resources and lack of things, right? So you have to figure out ways to restore the resources, leverage, the assets that are happening even around it, you know, but like figure out ways to put those things in the community to incentivize people to stay.
Yeah.
But that also goes back to jobs.
Right.
And some of those things too, because you can't. It's not that Ken has a lack of jobs. I don't think. I think it's more of like jobs that are paying well, enough to be able to
be a homeowner and things like this.
Exactly.
Right. That's
There was another question you asked in there, and I don't want to avoid it. What was it?
Oh, gentrification, transient community. You were answering that. Yeah. So you've seen the richness of a place like Africa that has tremendous resources, yet has been in many ways stripped of their rightful place, their position of wealth in many ways, and then coming back and coming to your own community and saying, how do we not let our own communities be stripped away from us? And then not to say it's simply the colonizers have forced us out, but that we have not positioned ourselves to stay in either. We have not valued it. And so how do we find ways to do that? I think is a very interesting conversation that we'll certainly will have to explore again on another day. I think that is fascinating because that is counter to the it's easier to be a victim. Let me just say that. And this is a tough thought. And it's just coming to me as you said that. It's easier to say these white people are gentrifying. They're taking over our communities. They're moving us out. They're investing all this money and making the place nicer and kicking us out. But when you live in a place and they start making it nicer, you'd be like, I kind of like this. Or we go to the nice place. We leave our community and we go to the malls and to the shopping centers and to the cities and vacations in the nice places. So when investors come in, we could also be equally upset to say, no one will invest in our community. And we're not necessarily doing it. Now, there are systemic issues that are way deeper than that. There's issues of income inequality. There's issues of not getting opportunities, issues of not being able to get into education, fair housing, plenty of other things that play into gentrification where there is a systemic issue and there are some intentional things such as cherry and walnut and things that happen in Canton community, which I know there's some efforts to address the fact that we had a very booming Black community.
So to that point, I think that shows us, I think it shows us a certain type of model, right? So the reason, like if you, like, let's just talk about Canton. Like for Canton, when that was stable, right? When Canton was a stable city, there was a couple things that were in place. One was segregation. And then two, then two was like it was before like the schools were desegregated. So the schools weren't desegregated. And then segregation was still in. So what that made, although it restricted certain people from certain sides of the town, what it did ensure was that all Black people were living together, all the immigrant families were living together, all the white families were living together. And so like the businesses that existed were being, patronized by upper class Black folks, lower class Black folks, and middle class Black folks. And so like so I'm not saying that like we should go back to segregation.
Sure.
So one could make that argument. But
interesting.
I would say that the answer could be to try to figure out how to cultivate mixed class neighborhoods, which is what our heart is to do.
Interesting.
Is like
mixed class, not mixed race isn't the issue. Whatever the race is,
racism has evolved to classism.
Absolutely.
The only reason why, so racism is classism. Classism was initiated by racism.
Right.
So this is why we see the ripple effects and the disparities and all these different type of things, is because we are literally living in the legacy of those policies. Because those policies and racism separated the classes. And so, there's been people who've been able to break through, but like the system is still in place. And is incentivized by income now as opposed to by skin color.
Right.
But yeah, so classism is the bigger thing.
Right.
And this is even, not to get on my spiritual high horse, but like Tony Evans would always say, like, if you want to see the real status or the real future of a space, whether it be a community or a country or whatever, look at the church inside of that space.
Interesting.
So like, one, vastly, our church are still segregated
very much.
But it is more hard to find a mixed class church than it is to find
a mixed
race church.
Wow.
Right? You can find a mixed race church, but like there's it's harder to find like a mixed class church. But for
meaning
whatever,
low income, middle income, and high income people all worshiping together, all working together, all serving together.
All that, right?
Yeah.
That becomes harder to find.
Yeah.
But going off of that, but I think that that's if we're trying to figure out how to stabilize a community, restabilize a community, it's figuring out how do we cultivate a mixed class neighborhood where and there's other places that have done this, like
Yeah.
Cincinnati has done it.
Okay.
Um, there's a couple other places around the country
Mm-hmm.
that have done
Solve
these
this problem. They
have
figured it
solved
out.
this problem,
Yeah.
but it takes some creativity.
Yeah.
It takes some investment, obviously,
Right.
but it takes leadership too. Like I feel, and not to say that we don't have great leaders. I think that we do. Um, but I think what I always go by this motto of like, even for myself, leadership
Mm-hmm.
is always the problem,
Okay.
and leadership is always
The
the solution.
solution.
Yeah,
I love that.
I think you've heard me probably say that
Well, you
before.
know, it's I firmly believe it because being someone who's served in leadership positions most of my wife always says, everywhere you go, you end up being a leader. I'm like, she's like, it's just who you are, and I am. And it's
Yeah,
not because I forced my way to the top, much
yeah,
like you. I'm not like, oh, I got to be the leader. I go in a room like, what do y'all need? Like, you need
yeah.
somebody to sweep the floor? I'll sweep the
Same.
floor. I happen to have opinions, thoughts, and a willingness to do the work,
Yeah,
which often elevates me to a place of leadership. But I also see when things aren't going well, that I also have to take the responsibility and say, well, I am the solutionist in this moment. I can't just wait for the people to do a thing. I have to put some policies, some things in place to make it work. And I have to listen to people because without the people, there's no one to lead. Without a staff, there's nothing to administer. When people say I'm in an administrative position, which I was an administrator or an executive director, I'm like, well, the people are more important to me, but I got to listen to them. I got to listen to the needs, and we got to do something about it. So
to lead from the
um,
back.
yes,
Yeah.
and I think John Maxwell said everything rises and falls on leadership,
Mhm.
and that's a very similar concept. Listen, Gino, we have to bring this to an end. I'd love to have more conversations with you.
Yeah,
I
man.
think future episodes, future stuff. I don't know what all we're gonna do, but just forums. I don't know. I'm inspired to sit and have important conversations, and it's not all doom and gloom. We have a lot of
No,
fun. We
yeah,
laugh.
absolutely.
There's interesting things to talk about even inside of it, but very inspirational story. You've
Yeah,
had some very inspirational experiences, and you're using that to give back to a community that you know and love. And I applaud you for that. I thank you for that,
yeah.
and I'm with you on that. If there's
Appreciate
anything
you.
I can do to help, let me know because I'm excited to put my services, my resources, my business behind it in any way I can.
My man, I appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you. All right,
Yes, man.
ladies and gentlemen, Gino Haynes here today on Lucas Live. Phenomenal, phenomenal guest. I'm really excited about it. You guys are going to see him back here again. There's so much we could talk about. People here in Canton, Ohio. If you're listening anywhere around the world, you're wondering what we're talking about. They're talking about Canton, China, Canton. What they talking about?
Mm.
Canton, Ohio is where we're at. Pro Football Hall of Fame city. Like any other city, we have some wonderful, wonderful things, wonderful people. We also have some ills and some things that we need to work on.
Yeah.
And there's people in this community like Gino who are doing it. He is also doing leadership development around the country, around the world. So if your organization, your community organization, or your corporate organization needs some help in the areas of leadership and you like what he talked about today, please reach out. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my Instagram is simple. It's my name, Gino at Gino Haynes. Facebook, Gino Haynes. If you want to check out the website, it is www.thelegacyinaction.com. If you want to email me, it's ghaynes@thelegacyinaction.com. I think that covers it.
I love it.
LinkedIn, if you want to.
LinkedIn's always a great place. I'm a big
Gino Haynes.
LinkedIn guy. Shout
Yeah.
out to LinkedIn. So,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, make sure you guys reach out to him. As always, Lucas Live is about education, motivation, and liberation. We want to teach you something that you didn't know before. We want to motivate you to do something with what you learned. And we want to liberate you to be free to take all that information and be your best self. We know that liberation and freedom without movement doesn't get us anywhere. We know that information without the motivation to do something with it leads to stagnation or worse yet, constipation. And we're all backed up with ideas and nothing coming out, nothing actually happening. So we are here to educate, motivate, and liberate you here at Lucas Live and Lucas Live Media. Make sure you check us out on all social media platforms at Lucas Live Media. And you can follow me at Lucas Tyndall. That's Tindell. We look forward to seeing you on another episode of Lucas Live. Everybody, have a great day.
Peace.